deep, really deep. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is a review of Supernova Part 2, season finale of season 1.5 of Prodigy. They start off, basically, they start off with this bizarre plan to activate a spatial supernova by blowing up the protostar through space-time. Which sounds like the Romulan thing, but wasn't, it turns out. They didn't want to convolute it in the last 22 minutes, of course. That would have been ridiculous. So they wanted to wrap things up. This protostar thing works. Hologram Janeway is, spoilers. Hologram Janeway didn't download herself onto the chip she wouldn't fit, which happens to everyone who tries to download a lot of information onto a chip. They escape in a shuttlecraft, which they of course named the Jacques from Silly Trek. No, it's not. It's not the Jacques. It's a later ship, but they find out that they're in the shuttlecraft thing. They've escaped. The weapon then stops because they blew up the ship, which does beg the question: why didn't they just blow it up, blow the weapon up to begin with? Why couldn't they just beam the weapon into space and blow it up? Didn't they? Kid show. The episode, and then they're adrift apparently, and they've been rescued. It's a year later. It's suddenly 2385. The end of the story. It's a year later, so it's during the events of before the events of before the Mars attack thing. It's got to be before that, because otherwise it wouldn't. It's a year later, and they're found and rescued from the shuttlecraft, which made it to Earth. There's a trial, and Janeway speaks in their honor and everything, and the other admirals decide to let them all go. But the twist is that that it isn't Tal that's not allowed to go. He's allowed to go. It's Gwen who is a liaison to her planet, has to go back and find her planet before all those other events happened in the other timeline thing. They also figure out that the space wormhole the supernova somehow made, which is impossible, has opened the door to where Chakotay is 51 years in the future from 2384. So he's off in the future from 2384. Or they said 50 years in the future, so the time warp put him in the future. It's just even further than Starship mission. The first contact, though, allegedly happens. It's not clear whether it's the 2260s or the 2280s. Is Gwendolyn actually responsible for that first contact on the Prometheus ship? Or is she later on? Hopefully they would fix that so that it doesn't happen like that. That universe is different now. That's going to rescue Chakotay from that timeline, because of the time warp all the way back to Salon. It's confusing, but it's Silly Trek, so they created the Silly Trek wormhole. Silly Trek land. Trying to avoid literally every beat that Kal Kat thought of here, with linking it up to the Mars attack, linking it up to the Romulan supernova, linking it all of that. They did the Lost ending, in a sense, because they kind of took all those clues and said, "Oh, those don't happen. No, don't worry about that. That doesn't happen." Which we kind of figured they would, so we said it anyway on the channel, but we didn't know. We were guessing. We didn't think they would be ballsy enough to do it, and they weren't to do that. Maybe they do that in the movie. I don't know. But then they suggest that they rebuilt the protostar as a class of ship, but that Janeway's going to go somewhere else. Dal and Gwen share a kiss. There's a bunch of other stuff. So we knew some of it was throwing you off. The other characters get a new ship. I mean, the Zero gets a new outfit. But yeah. But yeah, so they're technically in Starfleet as warrant officers under that would be under O'Brien. That'd be commissioned warrant officers. Chief O'Brien was chief. Yeah, so yeah, I think it works as a story. It's a kid show. They couldn't do the other two things. They didn't want to connect them. I can see why they wouldn't connect them now that I saw it, because why would you go through all the trouble trying to explain what would amount to a 90-minute explanation as to what's going on in 20 minutes? You can't. But Starship Location Strange Worlds does include Zero and does include Glendula. Well, there's a script. I've got the script. It hasn't been filmed yet, but it's 20 years after the events of the story. So roughly 20 years later. And yes, she does end up saving the universe and coming back. So she is in that one. Just like Tendi and the others Lord X are going to be in there too. So they are also 20 years later. Which is weird because the current show is done now, and they had to make sure it took place 20 years earlier. These two shows, Lord X and Prodigy. The current cast that's in their 20s and 30s playing teenagers. One kid is in this cast though, the little girl that plays the Rock. Yeah, and there was an oddity earlier on. They kind of did what they did with the Star Wars movie, where they were saying how awesome that one lady was going to be a captain of the Stormtroopers, the Phasma. They had faction figures, and it's going to be great for womankind and everything, and they were going on about it. She was going on at length about how awesome it's going to be Captain Phasma. And Captain Phasma didn't do anything. She was in the first movie, and then in the other one, and then she was killed. So they clearly didn't have any reason to include her. Cat. And so they didn't. So it was like in this one, they kind of did something with Okana the same way. They introduced Okana. They were saying, oh, Captain Okana's going to come back, and it's going to be like this tension, and Captain Okana's going to be like the girl's going to be jealous because she didn't try to pick up. The boy's going to be jealous because the girl's going to pick up on Captain Okana, and that didn't happen. Well, there was an episode where he was jealous, and then he found about his augment powers. But he's supposed to be like a teenager. So what? Okana's would be a pervert if he's trying to pick up on her. That'd be gross. So he didn't do that. He was like, no. The actor was like, oh, I'm totally gonna come back and be this raving asshole guy. Maybe he was like a jerk on the set, and they said, okay, you're only in one episode, maybe two, then we get rid of you. Again, that thread didn't go anywhere. He ended up in Romulan space. They built up this Romulan thing in the first half of this. Mainly it was a bottle show. And yeah, they weren't going to go there, it turns out. They weren't going to do the Romulan supernova thing, whatever. Just because titles came up early. We thought, titles, they're going to do that. Oh my goodness. They kind of didn't. It is weird that there's another supernova at the same time. But a protostar can't go supernova, so that really doesn't make any sense. And then we're going to build more of them. That makes sense. The Star Trek fanfare at the end when they showed the ship was cool. I don't know where Janeway and the others are going. So maybe they'll beam up to the Chimera A or something. At this point, no, the first Chimera, the 2280s Chimera would be around. According to the ship's plaque, January 2387, so 3 years in the future, they get that Chimera. There was an earlier Chimera, though, early 2380s. The Mark Scarson were captain, co-captain, said on that one. So yeah, we blew it up in a similar way, actually. I feel like they did the silly Trek, silly and ending, because it's silly Trek. But yeah, Gwendolyn and Zero will be in Strange Worlds. They did not make Playmates figures of them, but we have arranged to get a hold of some action figures that we painted up. I think we took a Kestra as Cardassian and painted her up to look like Gwendolyn. But yeah, she does exist in the future. So anyway, they're supposed to be teenagers, but the actors aren't really teenagers. I can see how a Kona guy would think, well, like these people I'm working with in the voice booth, they're all adults. But no, yeah, he probably wasn't thinking. He probably didn't see any of the visuals, didn't know what the show was, so he's like, oh, it's a kid show. Oh, okay. Yeah, all that stuff I said on that Star Trek board probably shouldn't have said. Yeah, that did look a little weird. Yeah. Sorry about that. He didn't say that. He didn't apologize. But yeah. And then the Starfleet Admiral scene at the end. Yeah, Kal Kat was probably in there somewhere. Nah, in the lower decks Admiral scene, I was in that one. But yes, not in this one. I'm not in this one. Yeah, so, cool, yeah. And I recently found a picture of the cameo bit from Star Trek Picard Season 1. Which they green screened in Kal Kat in the background. Cool. Blink and you'll miss it. But yes, Season 1. Let's see about Season 3. Well, we'll see. I'll act like I know what I'm doing, and they don't. I have no background. No. They did use the Titan A, though. They did. I knew they kind of would, because the Ryan Church design is the Shangri-La class is kind of. Yeah, but that's the other show. Anyway, so this is Star Trek Prodigy, and yeah. It just happened to be the design I chose for the ship, too, in my versions. But yes, slightly more elongated saucer section, slightly more blocky, rectangular, more Enterprise E than Excelsior. It looks like Excelsior 2 more than it does Shangri-La class, the one that I did. But the Ryan Church one, that's different. You know. Anyway, so onto the other thing. Yeah, I wonder how they're going to do. Well, they've wrapped this up in 20 episodes, roughly 22 minutes long. I guess the equivalent of watching a Trans Tech thing for one season. Anyway, so yeah, that was Prodigy. Star Trek Prodigy, coming soon to Blu-ray. And, I guess, hopefully.